Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Senators. I am the Reverend Dr. J. Deacon, minister of Channing Memorial Church in Newport, which last year called me to be their minister, me, a gay man, to be their spiritual leader. Still not on? There. I hope you heard at least enough of that. Small room. And they're calling me to be their spiritual leader was entirely consistent with our spiritual values and our faith. I've been a minister for 39 years, mostly in parish ministry, and in 39 years I have never been coerced to marry any couple that I didn't feel should be joined in marriage. Clergy have always had that freedom, and they always will. And our religious institutions are safe. They are not in danger. That is not the problem. The problem is that many of us are prevented by an old and very powerful prejudice that is written into our laws from joining in marriage magnificent people, people we respect and admire, couples joined by a very profound love and commitment. We're prevented from joining them in marriage by this very ancient prejudice. And serving as a minister, being called on to conduct marriages, I am expected to serve as an operative of a state-sponsored discrimination, and that violates my religious values very deeply. I remember very well when our religious movement, the Unitarian Universalist Association, by an absolutely overwhelming vote, voted to call for full legal recognition of same-sex marriage in 1996. Since that time, many other religious bodies have done the same thing. We have a very old inequity to correct. And what we have to do is to correct it, and not in a way that exempts or that allows businesses and individuals to ignore the law as long as they call their prejudice religion. And just personally, I would like to have the benefits, the protections, and the dignity of marriage myself. Now, even though I am a graduate of a fundamentalist Christian college and an evangelical Christian seminary, I am not going to give you a Bible lesson. That is not the purpose of this body. But here is something that moves me to the core, something that I believe is as spiritual as it is scientific. We, you and I, are the astounding, the magnificent achievement of 13.8 billion years of evolution. We with consciousness, we with moral vision, we with a sense of value. And we are evolving. All things are evolving. Our time and our culture are evolving. So, of course, marriage is evolving, and that is a darn good thing. The spirit is moving. Unless, of course, we want to go back to that allegedly unchanging marriage that must never change and never does change. But all we need to do is go back to, say, the 19th century before the passage of the Married Women's Property Acts. Before those acts were passed on both sides of the Atlantic, when the two became one, the husband was the one, and he automatically became the owner of his wife's property. This stuff was no longer hers. If we go farther back, we would find forms of marriage that you would not recognize, but these were mentioned in earlier testimonies today. Certainly forms of marriage that are, to say the least, disadvantageous to women. We don't want to go back. And I don't think, Senators, that you want to argue that marriage is not valid or legitimate unless it leads to the procreation of children. We don't really mean that. None of us really does. Heterosexual couples who have no intention of producing children or who cannot are not prevented from marrying or even discouraged from marrying. You can be on your deathbed and get married if you are heterosexual. So we really don't mean this business about procreation being necessary to marriage. It's a covenant of love. That is what it's about. Now, speaking more personally, I have lived all of my life with this prejudice. I have had my car firebombed. I have been assaulted on the street. I have been followed by strange vehicles. And during the course of this hearing, I have heard various speakers announce that they are more moral than I. I have heard people like me called cancers upon civilization. And we have heard a bunch of made-up statistics. And I have to believe that the people who read those scary, hair-raising statistics actually believe them earnestly. But the people who make these things up know what they're doing. The tragedy is that thousands of people believe them. I hear characterizations of who I allegedly am by people who know nothing about me. Characterizations of my lifestyle by people who know nothing of my lifestyle. And if you pass Bill 708 and set in motion a public referendum, there will be set in motion a torrent of defamatory disinformation and phony statistics and all the rest of that that'll make a lot of the contemptuous comments we heard tonight look pretty mild. We don't deserve that. Now, we've heard a great deal about how if same-sex couples are allowed to marry, that will blow the institution of marriage to smithereens. I moved here last summer from Massachusetts, and I cannot forget May 2004, when finally I was able to marry a whole set of couples. Every one of those couples had been together for many years. They were tested by time already. The very first one was two women and their little girl. They had already had a big wedding before, but they weren't married. And we stood by the waterfall at Smith College where they had first kissed. And I cannot tell you what that meant to them or to me. But if marriage is such, the ability to marry on the part of same-sex couples is going to destroy the institution of marriage, let me ask you this. Do you know what state out of all these 50 states has the lowest rate of divorce? It's Massachusetts. So today we can correct a great and old inequity, and we can honor the great tradition of the clear separation of religion and state in Rhode Island. Thank you very much.
Are there any questions or comments for this witness? Senator Metz.
Yes, Pastor, I respectfully disagree. Some people feel, you said you feel some people's beliefs are prejudice, and others feel that some of the beliefs you have is sacrilege. So the only thing I can say is that at Judgment Day, we'll all know for sure. So thank you very much.
Are there any other questions or comments? Thank you. Good morning and welcome.